If you're not out there with the customers initially selling yourself as a founder, you're not gonna understand the right product market fit.
If you look at Traceable and Harness, what made you start them as separate companies and why are you merging them?
You make the best decisions based on the data that you have at that time.
Why did you pick the API economy? Paul Graham said, if you want to be a successful founder in 2025, learn to code. So this economy is not going anywhere. It felt like AI is going to automate it.
My belief is there'll be two kind of coders.
What is happening differently in the IITs, which you really bring home with you?
The number one part is like the mindset that you get in after spending a few years in IIT is that anything is possible.
What you think customer obsession looks like?
The most successful businesses have that one thing in common, that customers love the products.
You have 4 lists, one of your most famous framework, what a founder should focus on. Do you want to talk about that? How do you describe your mindset?
My primary superpower is,
What do you think about the Silicon Valley culture?
you can only build a good startup if you
Today, I have the privilege of speaking with Jyoti Bansal on Ctrl Alt podcast. He's a pioneering entrepreneur whose journey redefines what's possible. From a small town in India to founding AppDynamics and leading it to a $3.7 billion Cisco acquisition, Jyoti's relentless drive saw him build Harness and Traceable. As co-founder of Unusual Ventures, Jyoti is committed to helping others build the future. In our conversation, we'll uncover how he navigated visa hurdles, transformed technical insight into visionary salesmanship. Jyoti shares his playbook for finding product market fit, the future of AI in software, and how he integrates work and life as a leader. Don't miss his advice for youngsters and what he thinks should be the future of IITs. Without further ado, let's bring on Jyoti Bansal. So Jyoti, you live in the city. Why do you pick the city? Why do you pick a city to start your company?
Well, I live in city because I like the energy of the cities. I'm more of a, I like the hustle and bustle and people around and this kind of high energy environment. So that's what I like living in a city. And why did I start the company here? I started all my 3 companies, AppDynamics and Harness and Traceable in the city because it's close to where I live. Like when you start a company, you are spending like so much time there, 15 hours a day. You want to just wake up and go to your office, very quickly.
Yeah.
That's why like a lot of people will start in the garage. I start like close to where I lived.
Wonderful. And back in India, where do you come from? And what was it like growing up in India? What was your environment like? Was it very entrepreneurial? Is this in the blood?
Yes, in some ways. I grew up in a smallish city in India, in Rajasthan. Smallish city in India, as is like at least 1 million people, so it's bigger than the many of the big cities here in the US. And there was not too much at that time to do in a city like that. So most people do some business. So in my family, just like a traditionally like a Marwari family, almost everyone will do some kind of a small business, selling something, selling this, selling that. My dad had a small business, selling machinery, irrigation machinery. So you learn, yes, these are entrepreneurs, what you call like mom and pop shops.
Yeah.
In India that time mostly will be pop shops, like not mom and pop back then.
Yeah.
But yes, like it's still like family shops, and that you learn a lot, growing around and see what's working, what's not working.
Yeah, wonderful. So then going from there, you went to IIT Delhi. So what was the transition like living in Delhi, and what were some of the nuggets of wisdom you learned at IIT Delhi which shaped your personality?
Sure. When I grew up in this town, and then in Rajasthan, and then you go to IIT in Delhi, one of the biggest cities. So there's a little bit of a cultural shock. It's
you felt that
because still it's a much bigger city, so the energy level is much higher. You feel that, but inside the IIT campus, the biggest part is when I was in my small town in my school, I was the smartest kid. And when you come to IIT, everyone is very smart, and you feel like, oh, you're nowhere, and people are like, it was clear like there's so many people much smarter than me, in different ways, in all kind of different ways. So that is kind of a shock, but a very pleasant shock as well. So all of the learning experiences in IIT to me were really around that. I wasn't the academic kind. I was bad at academics, structured, organized classrooms and all is not my thing. So almost all my learning was conversations.
Yeah.
So I like to learn at my own pace. Like I'm more of a self-learner than a sit in the classroom and learn in a lecture kind of guy. And but it's really all the smart kids. You have all kind of conversations from philosophy and economics and business and politics and society and whatever it is. There's just technology. People will talk about all kind of things and dream, and it's like high degree of creativity and high degree of intellect and intelligence, and that's really what shapes a lot of the learnings that happened in IIT for me.
Yeah, but IITians are distinctly different about the way they are doing well. If you look at the GDP, if you look at the software SaaS business, it's 30 to 40% of startups either have IITians in the founding team or they're the Fortune 500 CEOs. So tell me what was different, like you felt. I mean, forget the academic part. What is happening differently in the IITs, which you really bring home with you?
I think the number one part is like this kind of almost the mindset that you get after spending a few years in IIT is that anything is possible. When you see people around you and dreaming everything, and as a kid you go into IIT and they will tell you all the time you are the cream of the cream, you can do anything, and it's start to getting remove those barriers from your mind, like what's possible, what's not. And to me, that is the most important thing that makes IITians successful in their careers after. People are dreaming big. Everything starts with dreaming big, right? That's what's possible. Questioning the status quo, go after solving some problem which people think is not possible to solve. So that's definitely one part. The second is the problem-solving kind of thinking and the skills that you learn, right? And that you take everything as a problem to be solved. There's nothing. Everything is solvable if you start breaking a problem into smaller problems and start solving. So that kind of an engineering mindset to business, engineering mindset to all other disciplines of problem solving by breaking into smaller problems. That works very well because that's kind of a skill you learn.
So you become courageous in tackling problems. You don't lose to problems.
Yes, and that's how that's how I like to operate, and I see a lot of my IT friends. That's how they operate as well. You see a problem, you have only two options: either you are scared of the problem or you're excited about the problem.
Yeah.
So you want people are excited about the problem, hey, it's a great problem to solve, and you're excited that you have some challenging problem in front of you.
Yeah.
And that's once you are excited about the challenge, then it opens up all the kind of possibilities from there. Then you start looking at it's a great assignment, it's a great honor, great challenge, all kind of things about that, solving the problem.
Wonderful. So Jyoti, you have 25 plus patents, and you said you stopped filing for patents, right? So that's you're like a computer scientist. So tell me, why did you pick the API economy? What did you see 2017 onwards, or probably slightly earlier when you were in AppDynamics, or maybe at Wiley, when you held on to the idea until you got your visa, right? You did not give up on your startup idea. Most people give up when they have visa issues. You did not. So what did you see with the API economy, and you were one of the first AI companies trying to solve the software delivery problem, thinking like a VC who thinks 10 years ahead. What did you see?
Well, to me, the number one thing that became very clear to me, I will call it the developer economy in a broader way. If you look at the whole world is starting to operate on the code that developers write. Whether you are an airline, your primary interaction is a software app with your consumers, on booking your flights and whatnot, right? If you are a retailer, it's all online shopping. If you are a bank, it's all online banking. If you are almost everything, every interaction is becoming through software. So the innovation is driven by software engineering.
You felt that?
Yeah. So it was very clear to me.
It's not pure sciences. You felt software.
It's software engineering is and it would take a lot of the breakthroughs that are happening in anything else, and bring it to the consumers.
No, I agree with that.
So now the challenge that I saw working as a software developer is that things are just not productive. We could be 3x, 4x more productive.
Yeah.
And so to me, my passion started with that. Can you bring the right tools for software developers? You think of when we used to have the core element of economy was farming, agriculture. So like, agriculture was not very productive, and people will create like a tool, like, okay, there's a tractor or there is a fertilizer. These are like innovations that will happen, and now the farmers will be much more productive. And it will completely change the economies of, same thing happening with manufacturing, like, manufacturing and factories were not very productive, and then like, the assembly line concept was invented. That's a tool, right? And now the factories became much more productive. So my realization was that the world has about 35 million software developers now. And, they need better tools to get a higher degree of productivity. And the higher degree of productivity for software engineering the impact is not just on engineers, it's on the whole economy, the whole society, like the way like the farming innovations and the factory innovations, help the entire societies and economies to change. Same thing applies on the software and technology. So all my companies have stemmed from the same realization. My first company, AppDynamics, was about how do we bring tools for software engineers to troubleshoot when something goes wrong, so that they that's very streamlined process. Harness is about like, how to deliver all this software, leveraging, whatever the latest approaches are. AI is the core of it now. My company Traceable was about how do you secure all these software. But these are all really different kind of tools to help either 35, 40 million software developers to be much more productive and, impact everything else.
Paul Graham said, if you want to be a successful founder in 2025, learn to code. And Meta is poaching good AI developers and scientists for $200 million. So this economy is not going anywhere. It felt like AI is going to automate it, but then coding is not going to go anywhere.
And my belief is there will be two kind of coders going forward. Like, you have the kind of the trained computer science, software engineering coders, and they will become super coders with AI, because now it's like AI can help them significantly. And then, but you will have a lot of citizen coders or citizen programmers who are not trained software engineers, like, but they can use AI now to do, to create software. And the world would need both. So we'll have much more code coming out. So that's going to happen. But it's not just about software or code. It's about just technology and innovation that come. Yes, code is one part, but what are you coding? Now AI is a big part of what you're coding. And a lot of the innovation is happening there. Like, we may have like, we might be coding things around quantum. We might be coding things around, a lot of breakthroughs in biotechnology, but it's software and code is a conduit for all of those. Like, the technology breakthroughs don't happen without software and code kind of bringing, all of it together.
Wonderful. So Jyoti, if you look at your journey, you are not hesitant to pivot. You openly talk about, the failures you made in assumptions of initial customer profile or your product market fit journey, and then you pivot. Now, if you look at Traceable and Harness, what made you start them as separate companies, and why are you merging them? Like, Traceable is at $400+ million valuation, and in 2022, Harness was at 3.7 billion again. The same amount is sold AppDynamics for. So you bring them together. I don't know the valuation right now. Maybe it's a multi-billion-dollar firm, basically. So tell me that journey. How did that happen? Why did you start separate, and why do you merge them?
Well, I just said, like, you make the best decisions based on the data that you have at that time. And when I started Harness in 2017 and Traceable in 2020. And back 25 years ago, we are solving problems that for Harness, like how do we get software engineers to ship code in a much more automated, intelligent way with very less effort. And Traceable, I wanted to solve problems on like all this code coming out, how do we make sure it's very secure? And at that time, 5 years ago, my assumption was that these are two different buying motions, because for the security part, we need to sell to the cybersecurity teams. And for the software delivery part, we have to sell to the DevOps and the developer teams. And what started to happen in the last 5 years, that started to change. Now the software engineering and DevOps teams and cybersecurity teams, they are coming together into this notion called DevSecOps. So people realize, like, the code has so much complexity and changing so fast that the security teams, if they are siloed, they cannot keep up with what's happening. So they need to work together as one function. So we started to see that in the market. I will go into harness customer meetings that our sales team will set up, right? And our customer will say, it's like normally it's 1 hour meeting, right? So they will say like, can we save the last 10 minutes to talk about your other company, Traceable? And I go in a Traceable meeting, and they will say, can we save the last 10 minutes to talk about your other company, Harness? Because we are interested in like exploring both products or using both products or something like that. And now so you start getting these signals, and the signals are clear, like that it's makes sense to bring them together.
Yeah, but what I find very fascinating, you took the risk of becoming CEO of 2 companies. The other people I know are Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. They took that risk, and after them it's you being CEO of 2 companies. Did it wear you down? Like, how did you manage both? Or do you have a new kind of startup model because you're also VC? So does that make you wiser in running 2 companies?
In some ways, to me, it's all about solving the problem that the company set out to solve, and then bring the best people to work with you on that, right? So if you have the right people, yes, it's you can do. There is no one formula like okay, one person can only run one company. A lot of it comes down to like what people you have, what's where do you need to spend your time and energy, and your where can you make the most impact. So that wasn't an issue for me at all. Like many times people would ask me like how do you manage 2 companies, and that was like the
issue of the concerns.
Yeah, like like probably number 10 in my list of issues. Like the list of issues would be okay, are we finding the right product market fit for this product at Traceable? Do we have the right sales leader at Harness, or things like that?
Yeah.
Nothing to do with like my time as a CEO of 2 companies. Like that was never a problem.
And you got the CEO of Splunk for sales. You hired not the CEO, the sales guy, the VP of sales from Splunk, right?
At AppDynamics.
AppDynamics, okay.
Yes, when I was, AppDynamics was my first company, and I never really had any salesperson before that. Like, so first time I was hiring a sales leader, and I was like, what company I admire who would be close to the AppDynamics sales motion I would like to build after like studying a lot of different go-to-market sales motions. And that time back then, this was like 2010, so 15 years ago, Splunk was doing extremely well. They went public, very successful IPO, and they just had like a very wonderful sales motion they built out at that time. And so I said, okay, let me try to see if we can find someone who built that to join me and build that out for AppDynamics. So that's what I did, and I'm glad it worked out.
But you do your own sales. The first 6 clients you got on your own for Harness, right?
Yes. For every company, like you have to like
founder-led sales.
If you're not out there with the customers initially, selling yourself as a founder, you're not gonna even understand the right product market fit.
Yeah.
Like it's at Unusual Ventures, the number one thing that we talk about is how do you become more systematic about product market fit? Like product market fit is very similar. Most people think it's like a black art. How to get there is like just all intuition and just magically it happens. What we'd like to do at Unusual is to break it down into a bit of science.
Yeah.
Yes, there is intuition and all that's needed, but it could be a lot of science behind it, right? And the science comes down to that, like it starts with like founders out there, experimenting and validating their assumptions.
Yeah.
But you cannot delegate it to someone. You cannot delegate it to a salesperson. That exercise you have to do it yourself as a founder, because it was your dream and idea and of what you wanted to, the problem you want to solve. So you have the most understanding of the problem and the domain. Now you gotta go and refine it and iterate and build the right understanding by talking to the customers. So what we teach there is at Unusual is you gotta be very structured around it, at least 40-50 conversations you need to have.
Yeah.
And the questions you ask in those conversations, how you talk about it's really validating the problem. Is the problem real? And kind of getting to a few degree of nuances around that problem. Then is the solution, validating the solution, solution that you are bringing, is that the right solution? Is it going to work or not? And you still then you start peeling a few layers in there as well. And then validating the business value of it. So those are the 3 things that are important. And because it could be it's a good problem, it's a good solution, but people don't really care about it. They're not willing to pay any money for it. Then can you really build a business around it, right? So to me, it's and these things I learned the hard way at AppDynamics. when I was doing all this initially, AppDynamics was right in the financial crisis, the 2008 financial crisis. I started the company in 2008, like a few months before the Lehman Brothers crash. So there was no more money for me to hire a salesperson.
Yeah.
So I have to do everything myself because we just didn't have that much capital. Then I kind of found it like that is the way, for us to build the best product. These are the three things we need to refine and iterate, and validating the problem, validating the solution, validating the business value.
Yep.
And so now we teach that at Unusual, be very structured and scientific around it, and for founders to drive it. And you kind of learn from your conversations, you iterate, you pivot, and then you build the right product. If you can build the right product, then you can scale from there.
Yeah, your field guide is amazing. It's unrivaled. It's just one of those. I think you did it very early. Not many people were doing it. I think after Y Combinator, that quality of content in much more structured way I just found in Unusual Ventures. And what I loved it, you have a B2C approach, you have a B2B approach, and what I see in your first principles on customer obsession, you're trying to bring the B2C flair into B2B. So do you want to talk about that, what you think customer obsession looks like at Harness and Traceable, and how Jeff Bezos influenced you to adopt these principles?
If you look at almost any successful tech company, or maybe probably any successful business, the most successful businesses have that one thing in common, that customers love the products.
Yep.
And or customers love the service or the value that the company is providing, the vendor is providing.
Yeah.
And I strongly believe that there is no way to build a business until you solve that.
Yeah.
And so how do you do that? Jeff Bezos and Amazon is a great example of just that, making that as a North Star, the customer obsession. And yes, that was on the consumer side. But when we look at on the enterprise side, it's no different. It's an enterprise side. There also is, yes, there's an enterprise buying your product, but there's a human involved there. The person who making the decision, or person who is making the case internally that we should buy this product.
Yeah.
If we don't make them successful, most likely that person is losing out on their next promotion. Maybe they may even lose their job.
Yeah.
So there's a personal impact. And I tell everyone we have to take that seriously. It's our responsibility. Some person make a bet on us.
Yep.
And they risk their career or their career growth by making a bet on us. So we are not doing our best to make them successful.
Yeah.
We are doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And especially when you're early startup, that's 100 times higher risk that someone is taking.
Yeah.
If someone is in a business, in an enterprise, they are your first customer number 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, the very early, they're taking very high risk.
Yeah.
And if they fail in that, it's impacting their career.
Yeah.
So you just have to take it. So, I think once you make that as that it's important, because it's it's almost your duty, your responsibility to make them successful, then you start obsessing about that.
Yeah.
So I've always liked to create that as a core of the culture. AppDynamics, Harness, Traceable, let's obsess with making our customer who made a bet on us to be successful. Of course, you want to be very measured and create a structure around it. And the way we look at the structure is going back to the business value, what they expected the business value of it would be. By buying Harness, we're gonna able to do X, Y, Z better,
and
we make sure that happened. That's it.
You have 4 lists, one of your most famous framework, what a founder should focus on. Do you want to talk about that? Because we are now talking about customer obsession. Do you want to talk about it? The list provided by the customers, and then you have the vision list.
Okay. And it's a question people ask me how do you prioritize things on a product?
Yeah.
So it's especially in a startup when you're always resource constrained. You have less engineers than what all the things you can build. Even in a larger company, it's the same thing in most of the times, but startups are even more. So prioritization is very important. So that article I wrote about the 4 list is a framework that I like to use that has worked very well. Is the one list, you have to maintain 4 different lists. One is, what are your customers asking for to be successful in what they bought from you?
Yeah.
And you look at these are the things that customers want to do. The second list is around what your salespeople are asking you. Salespeople are saying, we can't win this deal because you don't have this feature, or our competitor has this feature.
How is that different? Customer list and sales list, aren't they the same?
Could be very different. Many times the salespeople are asking for things that that a competitor has, that we may lose the deal because of that, or like we need to show something to win the deal kind of thing. And you have those and you sold to the customers. And customers, because you got all the checks, and you won the deal. But when customers start using it after a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, they start running into things that that they didn't know at that time, which is okay, you cannot integrate with their enterprise user access system, and because of that they cannot use your product in their enterprise setting. So yes, you won the deal, but the customer is not going to get value.
Yeah.
So those are the list of things normally come from customers, which won't block your sales, but will block the customer adoption.
So that is taken care by your customer success team.
Yes, normally that list comes from customer success team.
Gotcha.
Like customer success team is telling this customer needs this customer needs this. They are not getting enough adoption because we don't have this thing.
Yeah.
The sales list is coming from salespeople or sales engineers and sales reps normally. It's we cannot win this deal because we don't have this feature or we don't have this capability, and or we lost to a customer or to a competitor because we didn't have these 3 things. So that's kind of the list coming from there. There's a third list that coming from engineers.
Yeah.
Which is mostly like technical debt kind of thing. That we need to improve our architecture here, otherwise we're not going to scale. Or we have this thing that we took a shortcut to ship something faster, but we need to go back and fix it in the right way. Those kind of things, right? And there is always a list of that. And the fourth list I call is coming from the product leader, the business leader, like CEO in a startup most of the times, or you're chief product officer or whoever it is, which is where are you going? Where do you want to go? Your vision of the product. And you have to keep making progress on that too, which is your customers are not asking for those things, and your salespeople are not asking for those in the deals, not engineers, but let's say you start from one part of your vision and then you have to keep building towards it, right?
Which is what I observed. You moved across lanes. If you look at the last 2017 onwards, you've switched so many lanes. And that's like what Bezos did, right? He started selling books and then now he's in cloud and
I wouldn't say switching lanes, I would say expanding the lanes.
Expanding the lanes.
That we sometimes people say, can we juggle too many balls? To me, that's the wrong mindset. It's not about juggling multiple balls. It's about driving multiple trains. It's yes, no one can juggle more than 10, 3, 4, 5, 10 balls, but you can have 1,000 trains running at the same time.
Yeah.
So when we think of multiple things, it's about system, and do we have independent drivers who can run 1,000 trains also, right? That's what I would say. Amazon and Bezos did it extremely well. One pizza team, 2 pizza teams. These are people who are responsible, accountable, building different things.
Yep.
That's why they got from selling books to selling everything else.
Amazing.
And these are all running in parallel. That's.
So if you look at that, your most famous talk, I loved your talk in Startup Grind, 10 minutes. I just keep watching the talk. I think it makes me think about so many new things every time I listen. Mm-hmm. You talk about you are a startup of startups. It's just a very fascinating concept. So can you tell us how you run a startup of startups, 15 different startups inside your ecosystem? How do you do it?
Yeah, that's very near and dear to me. That one thing I saw at companies starting with my first company, AppDynamics. That you build one really great product.
Yep.
At some point, it's hard to keep growing your business in a significant way with the one product, because most of the enterprise software world, that one use case, one product is around that one core use case, is not big enough for you to sustain a very high growth. So now you need to get to second use case or second product, which is adjacent, and then you have to go in a third or fourth. Now most of the times, and most companies struggle with doing that. The first product you build, you have some very high degree of passion around solving that problem. Someone had it as a founder, most likely. There was a lot of hunger because it was do or die. Because if you don't solve it and you don't compete, the startup will die.
Yeah.
And there's a very clear accountability of the company to your investors, your board, everyone, all your employees around that. And so now you have the survival of the fittest mindset, and all that happens, and that's how startups succeed. So you build your first product. By the time you're building a second product, most of those things are gone, because now it's even if the second product fails, the company is still surviving because the first product is driving some revenue. So you don't have that degree of pressure. The second is you start getting lazy on delivering the most competitive value to the customers, because you can just bundle the second product with the first product and it's not as good. Many times you don't have the people who are running it, they are not as passionate about that problem.
Yeah.
So, I struggled with it at AppDynamics, going from first product to second to third. And then I realized, a simple realization, okay, what made us successful in building our first product so good? Why can't we just replicate that for our second product and third product and fourth product? What made very successful? Why do it any differently? So let's start second product as a startup inside the company
with the same passion,
with almost the same parameters, that we don't bundle with things. So it's there is clear accountability. You win the business, you compete for the business, and if you don't have a good product, you don't win. You're not standing on the strength of your first product. Second product has to stand on its own strength and compete and win. This person who's running it is equally passionate as you were as a startup founder for the first product.
Yep.
All of the things that make your first product successful, you just bring that cultural element to it. Yep. And that started to work very well. I started experimenting with that model, inside AppDynamics. And then and in AppDynamics we were by the time we were going IPO and we did sell the company, but the day before the IPO, we grew from one product to about 10 products with this kind of 10 really good products, and that was driving a lot of our growth. So at Harness, to me it was very clear the market for Harness is so massive in what we are building, all this next generation of developer toolchain around DevOps and DevSecOps and software delivery, that to really capture the market, we have to go from one product to 2 to 3 and 4. So we need to refine that concept that I was doing at AppDynamics even more. So in Harness, we have this the startups within a startup concept built out very
15
well.
15 of them.
So we have, at AppDynamics right now we have 15 products. And we grew so fast. Sometimes people are amazed, how did you grow just from one product 4 years ago to 15 very good. These are not 15 small mediocre products. These are really top-notch 15 products that we have built, and we're building 3 new every year. Is this startup within startup concept? These 15 products are run by 15 startup CEOs inside Harness. Makes my job easy, because we have 15 passionate CEOs running it, and there's a good degree of accountability. There is good degree of ownership. We don't bundle the things together, so there's own accountability to the customer as well. The customer can pick and choose. They can, if they think, okay, these 4 products are good, they buy these 4. They think the other 4 are not good, they don't buy it. So we earn our business on each one of them, and it was great. We are innovating at a very, very rapid pace because of that. And of course, you mentioned Amazon. That's always been an inspiration for me on that. I do think the Amazon folks will describe in a different way, but their concept was very close, very similar.
Yeah, but also they're B2C, for large part they're B2C, yes. But you're more B2B.
Well, but they eventually moved to AWS, which Cloud, is which is B2B as well, right? But the concept they had was small teams, building products, taking ownership, and then if you succeed, you get more funding, more but a lot of independence and a lot of ownership. It's very similar kind of motion, but I've been bringing it in the startup world with that's what I call startups within a startup.
Yeah.
And it's driving a lot of growth for us.
How do you describe your mindset now? Do you think more like a CEO VC or a CEO operator or a CEO who's a scientist, or you are more always in a founder mode VC?
That's a good question.
Because you're now building an empire around API economy. I can see that your products, you're even this. I feel Traceable cybersecurity, it's going to bump up the way AI innovation is happening. People are not going to feel secure. There's so much insecurity around how hackers can leverage AI. So your Traceable market is going to
it's a very
very large
market, and we are doing really great in that.
So how do you describe your mindset? Going back to the question.
It's a great question. I haven't thought about it like that. I would probably say all of above. I look at in many ways my primary superpower is building good products.
Yeah.
And I never want to lose that, and I never like to lose that. So I spend a lot of time building products. A lot of people know me as a business guy, as an entrepreneur, as a talking about sales and go-to-market and all those things. But my core superpower is building products.
You do build you're in the weeds right now, even now.
Yes, I run product teams directly.
So you code in AI, or you've seen the code.
Building products is not necessarily coding. Yes, I do code as well, sometimes, but I don't code too much. And that's not where I look at. To me, building products is understanding what the customer pain is, how we're gonna solve it, and working with our product teams closely. and in driving that innovation and being in the weeds there. It's less about of course sometimes you have to write code to understand things, but I don't write code that ships anymore, which I miss sometimes, but not too much. But I like to solve problems by building good products. So that's the core of it, and at some point you start doing it at a larger scale, what problems the problem that we are looking at solving at Harness now, combined with Traceable, is to be the AI platform for everything after coding. So you have AI for coding, right? That's happening. So the code volume will go 10x of.
You mean like the cursors and the
yes, the cursors and all that. But the code comes out. But taking that code and shipping it to production is a very complex process. You have to. There are 30 different workflows that need to be done. All kind of testing. There are 10 kinds of testing you have to do. All kind of deployment disciplines, code deployment, infrastructure deployment, database deployment, verifications, rollbacks, all kind of things. So a lot of security things you have to do, from code security and API security and compliance checks. You have to do a lot of optimization. So there are 30 different things you have to do. And we look at can we bring AI to all that? Can we be the AI and automation solution? And Harness and Traceable, we have been building all of that for the last 5-7 years now. So we have a very strong position to be that platform for it, and that's what we are innovating and building more and more around that. So there's a lot of innovation, exciting innovation. So when I think of myself, driving innovation is core of my my strength, and I've always wanted to do it. And I strongly believe if you build good products, you also have to also nail the business side of it. So that's where that's where the business building comes in, which is go to market, selling, the mechanics of the business from your costs and profits and all kind of things. So you have to do that as well. So in general, I like to spend my time in I normally say 1/3 product, 1/3 with customers, and product and customers to me go hand in hand, because you can't build good products until you understand customers. And 1/3 running the business, the business side of things.
The balance sheet and all of that.
All the kind of, which could be balance sheets, hiring, to investors and board and all kind of things, like process management, all the operational stuff. And that's a good balance. Yes, I do like to invest in startups and have my VC hat as well. But my VC hat is mostly with the notion, still very similar, is to help other founders do the same things. So when I think of my job as VC, I normally think of yes, I can do a lot of this innovation inside Harness and have all these startup CEOs, I can facilitate them to do all the innovation inside Harness. But things that we can't do inside Harness, there are a lot of great founders outside who want to do all these innovations. So can we do our learnings? Can we teach them? Can we, that's where we are so focused at Unusual on teaching and knowledge sharing and enabling founders to learn the similar kind of things. Right?
So tell me, what is Big Labs? Seems like an umbrella term. What does Big Labs include? What do you include? Is it R&D or what is it?
Well, Big Labs is really my research lab, my own personal research lab. It really stands for Bansal Innovation Group.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's that was, so if I have a new idea that I really want to work on outside of Harness, this is where I will have some small number of folks who will research and see if the idea is any good. And the two projects that came out of Big Labs was Harness and Traceable. Harness was was an idea that we researched inside Big Labs, and before and Traceable was also an idea and a concept, that a problem that I wanted to solve. But before you decide that you want to start a company to do that, you have to do a lot of research and ideation and prototype and validation, all those kind of things. So that's what we did in Big Labs. And then once I was convinced that okay, these are the the problems and markets I want to go after, and they became independent companies.
Amazing.
And Big Labs is so kind of the holding company for me also for Harness and Traceable.
Wonderful. So Jyoti, I want to ask, if you look at the AI startups coming, burgeoning every single day, the kind of feat every day news is a shark, something new is coming. Who's your favorite AI founder outside of Big Labs and outside of Traceable and Harness and AppDynamics? Which founder did you really like, especially in the AI domain? Are they also scientists like you, or are they like business people? And what kind of founder did you like?
Well, of course, like almost all the successful founders in the AI domain, even more so, are technical scientist people, like, and then they, bring the business to it. There's a lot of exciting, innovation happening. It's hard to pick up,
Okay.
pick a favorite. I'm a big fan of Anthropic. I think
Anthropic, me too.
they're doing great stuff. But OpenAI has definitely been the pioneer in this.
Sam Altman.
But it's good. The competition is good.
Yeah.
Hard not to be inspired by Jensen. Like it's
the infrastructure, the core infra.
Yes, like everything ultimately is.
Then they rang the bell. Is the trillion.
The $4 trillion. The
$4
trillion. Yeah. It's. I was in an event a couple of months ago when he was there, and I got to spend some time with him.
Oh my God! What did you guys talk about? If you can talk about.
It's all AI, of course. But it's. But how he talks about, like, it's when people think about, one of the things that, like, stood out for me when what he was talking about was, many times people talk about, okay, the risk of AI, of, like, all of that stuff, right? He said, like, it's kind of like humans, like, some humans are trying to do something, and, you need another human to do check and balance for it, and, you have accountants, you have auditors, you have people doing other things. AI will become like that. There is AI for doing something, and there is another AI to protect against that, and there is another AI for, so we'll have like thousands of AIs, and they all, like, it becomes an ecosystem of, like, checks and balances and all of that. That was like a fascinating conversation, like, I was thinking about that.
Yeah, I would have loved to listen to that conversation. Jensen Huang and Jyoti Bansal.
No. Jensen Huang is playing a different game, yes.
So Jyoti, here you are with this phenomenal experience of being a VC, building 3 startups. What would you go back to your IITian faculty members and your IITian management and tell them to do differently, to teach differently? You are in a position of influence to make that statement. If you say it, people will actually make the change.
It's a very interesting question, because I would say, like, if I go back to my time in IIT, I would say, we should teach people more business and entrepreneurship and all that. But the reality is, I went to IIT recently. We don't need to teach that anymore. Like, they were like, just in IIT Delhi, there were like 100 startups in the hostels that people are working on already.
Oh my
so
God.
I don't think we need to give any advice. I almost feel the advice I had to give to some of them was the inverse, which is very strange. Like, if I have to go back in my IIT days, I would say, like, we need to give people more learning on business and entrepreneurship and all. Now I almost have to give the inverse, like, don't jump into it so fast also. Like, sometimes you have to learn the problems in the industry. Because you won't, even until you experience the problems, how would you know what to solve? So everyone, like, yes, you're a student, and the problems you've experienced are ordering food, dating, and so yes, you can solve things around that. But you have not experienced other problems. So what the problems you could think of, the universe of problems that you're excited about solving would be very narrow.
Yeah,
so it's also not, it's not necessary that all the startups have to start in the university. Go and work in the industry, see real problems, and maybe 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, when you kind of experience some problem that you get passionate about, and maybe that's a good time to do it also. Yeah. So it's what I would have advised on my time would be very different than what I would advise, what I see in IIT today.
Yeah. But in YC, a lot of Stanford and Ivy League dropouts are getting $15 million checks. What do you think about the Silicon Valley culture of?
It's similar problems. Like, yes, a lot of people are getting exposed to problems early on, and that's great. Like, it's to me, it's like, you can only build a good startup if you are passionate about a problem, and it's hard to be passionate about a problem if you have not, experienced it at a at some kind of a deep level. Yeah. And normally you experience it by working around, in that domain in some way. Like, let's say you saw a problem around manufacturing is messed up, and robots and robotic factories can do it better.
Yeah.
If you've never worked in a manufacturing industry ever,
how do you know?
Would you even understand the depth of the domain to solve the problem?
Yeah.
Right. So so there are certain problems that could be solved without being working on those domains ever. As a student, you never worked in the industry and you never solved it. But that is that's only a small subset of all the problems you can solve. So I encourage people, like, there's no harm in going out in the industry, like, you have your whole lifetime, it's not like, you have to start your startup, while you're in your undergrad, and there's a lot of learnings that you can do and then start as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Jyoti, on that note, there are a couple of things which intrigue me. You took a break, like a sabbatical after AppDynamics. You could have retired. You had made enough money. You could have retired. What did you do in that 1 year, which you want to share with everyone?
Sure.
I'm sure you had like a list of things to do.
Yeah. When I was working at AppDynamics as a founder, you don't really get too much time to do some things. So I had a list compiled of these are the things that I wish I had time to do. So after the AppDynamics sale, my first instinct was to retire. That's what everyone was telling me. Okay, you made enough money, you should retire.
Play golf, go to the beach.
So so my list was like safari in Africa. I had hiking trekking in Himalayas. I always wanted to do like Bhutan or around that area. Wanted to hike Machu Picchu. I wanted to see fjords in Norway, and of course beaches and golf and all that also. And I said let's do it, and in 6 months all of it was done. Like all my list was done in 6 months.
You had a process. You knocked off everything.
Actually, and the safari in Africa, not even one time I went again, like second time, and then after that, like I was like, okay, what do I do now? Like and then I started to realize, okay, that list is done. It is great. Like it was a pending list, but what do I really enjoy? Like it's I don't enjoy this retirement thing. Like at some point, like it just doesn't give me the
purpose,
the purpose, the pleasure even, like and what I like to do is like this building companies, building products, competing in the market, all the stuff that comes with with it. So that's okay. Let's go back in doing that. And at that time, to me, it's like okay, let's. That's when I started Big Labs to research a few ideas that I had, like to make sure like I'm jumping in the right startup that I'm starting. And then I a few years later, Unusual as well, which is like my two passions were like building companies, and second was helping other people do the same thing, like give back to to whichever extent I can.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of Unusual came out from that, like that let's just create a way where we could be more organized around helping other founders.
So there's no resting period for you. Jyoti Bansal never rests.
I did rest for that 6 months, 8 months.
Okay, that's enough for a lifetime.
yeah, maybe for another 10, 15 years. Although I have one thing that was very clear after that, when I jumped back into starting Harness and all, that you gotta bring in a bit better balance. When I was doing my first company, I was like, okay, let's put other things on hold.
Yeah.
This is what I'm focused on. I realized like, I can't put things on hold anymore.
Yeah.
So I have to integrate it all into the life. Like, if I'm going to jump into, building the next startup for the next 10 years, 15 years, I can't put things on the life on hold for 10, 15 years. So I got to integrate it all very well. So that's something I've become much better at. Like, than
that's
before.
That's again a skill and an art. It's art of leading life. So
yeah, because I also look at, okay, this is what I'm going to do all my life until like
So better get that right.
So why not like just integrate it better? Yeah.
So that's a great advice for people who are listening. Have a balance in your life, no matter what you're trying to do. So it's a positive reinforcement. It makes you better at what you do.
It does. It really depends on like what your priorities are, what you want to achieve. Like
Yeah.
So there's a balance. There is like a lot of times people think of balance in terms of time for this, time for that. I don't look at it in these things. I look at like did you make forward forward progress on each one of the things that you care about, like family and friends, and maybe social impact, and of course your business, your work, or like each of the train is moving forward.
Yeah, all the trains. That's your analogy, a system where all the trains move forward. You're not juggling, you're making sure they do well and they're moving forward properly.